All right, hey, welcome to our live stream. My name's Jordan. I'm a guitar instructor and I teach also general music. I'm here at Transformation Earth Music. So glad you're here at the live stream. So if you're new, these live streams are for you. So they're basically, we're doing kind of like a group workshop on guitar is what this is all about. So basically this is a chance for you to come and kind of learn some new ideas and maybe improve your technique and find new ideas, things to work on, and also to ask questions. So anytime you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And if you're watching this as a replay, go ahead and put them in the comment section, whatever questions you have. But if you're watching now, you can put them in the chat, and then I'll try and look and see what your questions are. And address whatever you want to look at. And also anything you put in the chat or in the comment section if you're watching the replay, that can also be content that we use for future live streams. So anything you want to see covered in another live stream, any technique or maybe a song or just something you want to kind of go over or something you're curious about, just let me know and we can take a look at that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at how to make your guitar practice really efficient. So unless you happen to be someone who's really fortunate, maybe you're just going into college or something, or maybe you're, for whatever your circumstances are, you have lots of free time and you're able to practice like hours and hours and hours a day, or maybe you're retired and you have a chance to practice hours and hours and hours a day. If you do, that's really fortunate. And if you don't, and a lot of people don't, maybe you're raising kids or you've got, really busy with work, but you still want to get good at guitar. You still want to improve your skill, you still want to get better, even though you don't have a lot of time. These techniques that I'm going to show you, these kind of steps for practicing, are going to show you the best way to practice, so that way you can use your time most efficiently. So you can get the most benefit from your practice, even if you only have a little bit of time. But the thing is, if you use these steps, if you use these, this kind of process, then what's going to happen is even if you do have a lot of time, you can use all that a lot of time that you do have efficiently as well. So even if you have a lot of time, it's going to be, instead of like a lot of time just kind of here and there getting a little bit better, you can have a lot of time really efficient practice and getting really good. So whether it's a little bit of time or a lot of time, your practice is going to get efficient. So let's go ahead and get started here. So what we're going to do, I'm basically going to show you how to use all these techniques for practice, and I'm going to show you on a song that I'm also learning. So a song that's new to me, that I'm, as far as learning on guitar, that's new to me. So you can see what it's like for someone to actually use these techniques. So instead of me doing a song I already know and just kind of pretending, and you don't really know what it's like, you could see me using this technique so you can see what it's like to actually apply them in a song. So you're going to see me trying a song, you're going to see me messing up and stuff, because this is a song that's that I'm working on, that I'm learning, but it's going to give you a chance to really see what it's like to use these techniques. So let's go ahead and take a look. So we're going to do John Mayer's Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. And I have an idea of which parts are going to be the tricky parts, but I'm just going to kind of play through it a little bit, and then basically we'll use the steps. So let me just tell you the steps, or kind of the parts you want to do for when you're practicing. So one thing you want to do is you want to isolate the tricky transition. That's kind of the first step. So that's what I'm going to do here in a minute. I'm going to play through, and once I get to a part that's hard, basically a part that I mess up, I'm going to isolate just that part. Just that small little part there, I'm going to isolate. And you'll see how important that is to isolate just the smallest part. But you isolate the smallest part, and then I'm going to look at what part of my technique is holding me back. So basically, if there's a part that's hard, there's some reason that it's hard, or there's some reason I'm not doing it right, or I can't play it the way I want to. And so, so that's the next step. You want to look at what technique or what is happening here that's making it so it's not play right. And another thing we're going to do is only practice the part that you actually need to. That's like the third step, is only practice the part you actually need to, which is usually the hard part. It's the part you're not good at. And that's what people usually want to avoid, but that's the part you want to go right to. You want to skip practicing the easy parts. Only practice the hard part, and we'll look at that. And then you want to practice with focus and presence. So that means you don't want to be distracted. I really don't think it's a good idea to practice while you're watching TV or doing other things. It's just not the best use of your energy and time, because your energy and your mind space is being scattered instead of all towards one thing. It's better to have less time practicing, but have it be really focused, and you're only doing what you're doing, only working on what you're doing, instead of maybe more time watching a show and practicing while you're watching a show. I just think it's just important not to have kind of like a split mind like that. And it makes your practice better too if it's really focused. And we'll look at what that's like. And then the last thing is you want to use a metronome. So lots of people say to use a metronome, and they're all right. So you definitely want to use a metronome, and we'll see why that helps too. So let's look at the first part. So isolate the tricky transition down to the smallest increment. So we're going to look at the tricky part. And the way you find the tricky part is you just play the song. And once you've warmed up on it, so I have just warmed up on the song just a little bit. You don't want to do this when you haven't warmed up, because if you haven't warmed up, then like usually maybe everything on the song might not be that good because you haven't even warmed up yet. So warm up, do some warm-ups on your guitar, whatever that is for you. Play the song a few times just so you're like, okay, this is, I'm to the point where this is the best I can actually play the song right now. And then when you get to that point, then play through it, and then you're going to find the tricky part. All right, so let's try that. Ooh, there was a tricky part. Usually that one's not. Okay, so let's see right there. Let's see what happened. Okay, so yeah, I don't think that one really is. I can get that one pretty easy. But right after that, so that one's a little tricky. Sometimes that transition's a little tricky. So that is a good spot to start. So let's get, let me just get you guys a good view here. Here we go. Okay, so I noticed that part right there, right? Oh, that was a little tricky. It wasn't clean. That's the way you know it's tricky, right? And you gotta kind of have a high standard when you're doing this. You don't want to be playing and like, oh, that was pretty good. That was almost got it. When you're looking for the tricky parts to isolate, you want to think like, so this is John Mayer's song, right? You want to think, does this sound like John Mayer playing it, or at least does it sound, as clean? And if it's not, and if there's a little bit fudgy, that's the part you want to fix. We're not just going for okay. You want to go for like really good. You want to shoot for the moon. You want to make it sound really nice. So that transition wasn't really quite there. Okay, so let's isolate it. So it was, let's see. So that part was fine, but then going to here was the tricky part. So when I say isolate, this is what we mean. Only the part that was tricky. If that's not tricky, we're not isolating that. But if from here to here, if that's the tricky part, that's the part we isolate. And that's the part we're going to practice. So to show you what I mean, we're not going to practice like this. We're not going to practice that. That's too much. You might think, oh, that's only a little bit, but that's too much because this is not tricky. That's not tricky. So I'm not going to practice that. What was tricky was just here to here. So that's the only part we're going to practice, this first isolation. Just this. So when it went from right there, that was the tricky transition. That's the part we're going to practice. That's what I mean. That isolated, just this to that. And we're not adding all the extra parts, just those two parts is what we're going to do. So now we know we've isolated. Now that we've isolated just that tricky part, let's see what is happening there. What's the technique that's going on that's not making it be just just the way we want it? So let's see. Okay, you can play through it a couple times, see what's going on here. So this one's pretty close. What I can see happening, maybe you can notice it too, is sometimes the finger is just not landing in the right spot. So basically it's kind of position shift issue. So it's like sometimes I'm getting here and the middle finger is a little bit past the fret. So that's not going to work. Let's see what else. Yeah, that's usually what's going on, is the middle finger is just sometimes a little bit past the fret on the sixth string. That's muting it. And so that is the part of the technique we want to focus on. Now we know what we're doing. We're not just doing this over and over and just kind of hoping it gets better. Now we know what the technique is that we need to fix. I need to get my middle finger to land right there in the middle. And if you want to follow along with this part of the song, I'll go ahead and show you what I'm playing here so you can kind of learn it too if you don't already know it, if you want to try it out. So basically it's 5th and 4th strings and the 9th fret, played at the same time and double stop. And then you go down with your middle finger. That's the part I was talking about. Middle finger on the 6th string on the 5th fret. and then pointer finger is pushing down the 5th and the 4th strings on the 4th fret, and then so you play those 3 strings, and then, oh sorry, and 3rd string too. Your pointer finger is also pushing down the 3rd string. And so you strum all 3 of those strings, and right after you strum them, you hammer on your ring finger onto the, what is that, the 6th fret. Oh, excuse me. So you hammer that down onto the 6th fret. So that's the part we're doing. You're doing this, 5th and 4th strings on the 9th fret, and then you go to this chord with a hammer on. Right? So that's what we're trying, if you want to try it out too. And the tricky part, at least for me, what was tricky was getting my middle finger in the right spot. So here's what you do. You practice it slow. You practice it really slow. Once you know what the technique is, okay, now I know what the technique is I need to fix. How do you fix it? Practice it slow. That's how you fix it. Really slow. When we say slow, we mean really slow. So like this, slow. This slow. Why do you go that slow? One reason is it gives you enough time to actually get your finger right where you want it. If you're going too fast, see what's going to happen? I kind of have to adjust because I don't know how to do it yet. My finger hasn't learned where to go yet. And it's hard to learn things fast. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but you know, if someone's trying to explain something to you and they're saying it really, really fast, it's hard to understand what they're trying to ask you to do. Or if things are happening really fast, maybe it's hard to kind of learn and like, what am I supposed to do? But when someone slows down and they kind of explain it slowly, step by step, right, then you can learn it. So it's really the same thing here. If you do it really slow, you can make your finger do what you want. See, look at that. So slowness is kind of the magic ingredient here, because you can go as slow as you need to until you get it just how you want it. That's how slow you need to go. Just slow enough until you can get it. So for me, it's about this slow. If I go that slow, yeah, there we go. Then I can make my middle finger land right where I want it without having to adjust or without it going too far over. If I go a little bit faster, I won't quite get it. Sometimes I'll kind of miss. So for me, this is what the speed is. For you, it might be different. You might go really slow. You might need to, because maybe this is like a whole new chord. And that's totally cool too. If this is like a whole new chord, then you'll probably have to go really slow. Just slow enough so you can get your finger here and all the fingers to land right where you want at the same time. Like if you look at our live stream when we did the chord changing techniques, since this is kind of a chord changing technique, we're changing to a chord, you could do those techniques where you get all the fingers to land at the same time. So that's one thing you want to do if this is a new chord. But if it's just this kind of transition that's tricky, not really a new chord, then just however slow you need to go to nail it. And just find what that tempo is, what that speed is for you. And then once you find how slow it is, stick with that speed, that tempo. And that's going to be your tempo, okay? So that's what we're looking at. And then we want to do this third step, which is practice only what you need to. So we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but this is just getting real specific about it. I'm not going to practice the parts that are easy, even though the parts that are easy are fun, right? Like that part's fun and it's easy, but I don't need to work on that. So I only play that part when I'm just playing for fun. When I'm practicing and I'm trying to get better, not that practicing is not fun. Practicing is fun too. But this is when when you're focused just trying to improve it, you only want to spend your time on the things that you want to actually improve. So it's not the best use of your time to practice parts you already got. Even if it seems like, oh, it's just a little extra part, you'll be amazed how much faster you'll improve the tricky part if you only practice the tricky hard part. So we're taking out all the extra parts, we're only doing the hard part, which is this to that. Even though it's like, oh, this is not that much, maybe this doesn't seem that exciting, but you'll be excited when you learn it. So that's what motivates you to do it, is when you finally get it, right? Okay, so, and then the fourth step is practicing with focus and presence. So now that we know what we're doing, when you practice, you want to practice with focus, which means you're only actually paying attention to this. And presence means that you're fully here. You're not kind of about what's happening later tonight or what happened yesterday, and you're not kind of in your thoughts about those negative thoughts, oh, I can't do this, this is too hard, I don't want to do this. You let all that stuff go, you get yourself in a positive mindset, thinking of how exciting it's going to be when you learn this. Just imagine John Mayer playing the song, and imagine you're going to sound like him playing the song. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm not thinking like, oh, this is too hard, I don't like this. I'm thinking like, wow, I want to sound like him playing it. And have those high goals too. Don't be like, oh yeah, well maybe I'll get kind of good at it. I can never play like him. Like, no. All of the really good guitar players, they all wanted to play it like their guitar heroes and their musicians that they looked up to. They weren't like, oh, well, I'm gonna be inspired by them, but I'll just do whatever I can. No, they were like, I want to be able to play that good. That's really cool. So you can do the same thing. Think like, I want to be able to play like John Mayer. Shoot that high goal. All right? And so that's the focus in the presence. Only what you're actually doing, not thinking about other things. And it becomes like a meditation. And it makes your practice improve faster. Because all your mind power, all your energy, all your neural connections, if you want to think of it that way, are all going towards this one thing. And when you're practicing and only focusing on one thing, it gets good fast. It's this power of your mind that comes in. So I'm not thinking about anything else. See, this is already getting a lot better, I'm noticing. It's already getting better. And if you do notice that all kinds of other thoughts are coming in, or you're feeling feelings come up and stuff, that's fine. Just kind of let it come in, let it pass. But you're just coming back. I'm just doing this. Okay, and then the last step that you want to do is use a metronome. Once we know exactly how to practice it, and we're only practicing the tricky part, isolating it, and we're practicing with focus and presence, then the last thing is to use a metronome. And the reason you want to use a metronome, one thing is it's going to kind of keep your practice focused and consistent. Because if you don't have a metronome, it's easier to get distracted, but the metronome can help you stay focused because it's right there going click, 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 almost kind of like someone standing next to you, like practice it again, practice it again, practice it again. And it really just keeps you focused. So if you play for the metronome, it keeps you focused. Also, it makes you still stay in time. And that's just really important to be able to play in time, play in a rhythm. And so the metronome really trains you for that. So I'm going to get a metronome, and you're going to find a tempo. That's the speed of how fast you were able to do it well. So for me, doing it well was about this fast. Da, 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 da. So that'll be click, 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 click. So about like that, right? So I want to grab a metronome and just find about that tempo. Click, click. Let's see, I think that's about right. Maybe a little faster. I think I was doing just a little faster than that. Okay, so for me, this is the tempo, about 55 beats per minute. But how fast it is doesn't matter. It's different for every person, where you're at, what song you're working on. So don't worry about, oh, this is too fast or too slow. It's just about what's right for you. So for me, this was the right tempo. For someone else, it might be faster or slower. So you just find what's the tempo where I can play it comfortably. Okay, and then you'll just do that. I'll get my metronome going. And so basically what you're going to aim for is you're going to try and get 5 to 10 good ones, I call them, which just means 5 to 10 reps, not just reps, but 5 to 10 times where you get it right. So if you miss it, don't worry about it. Doesn't matter if you miss it, but we just don't count that one, is all. But if you get it, okay, that's 1. Oh, that's 2. Oh, I missed it. That doesn't count, right? So you just get 5 to 10 good ones, depending on your time, at least 5. And that's 5 to 10 good ones with the metronome. So I'm just going to show you. So let's see. There's 1. There's 2. Yeah, it's a good tempo. 3. Yeah, so there's 5. So if you find the good tempo, it won't take long to get 5 good ones, 5 to 10 good ones. Then you just raise up the metronome. So this is 55, so you can go 5 usually the lowest is 5 at a time. Sometimes you can go 10 at a time, kind of depends. You just don't want to go too fast. If you go too fast, then you'll know because it'll just be too hard to get it right at that tempo. You won't be able to get that right at that tempo, and you won't be able to get 5 good ones very easy. So don't try and bump it up too high. That'll make your improvement take longer. Your improvement will happen faster if you just do small increments, because that improves your confidence too. Because if you do small increments, really small increments, it doesn't feel that much harder. So if you just do it a little bit faster, it's not that hard. It doesn't feel harder, so you have more confidence. You feel like you can do it. So I'm going to try 10 faster. And if it's too fast, then I'll slow it down. This is a good one. This is a good one. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so 10 worked. So there we go. And then I can try 10 higher again and see how that goes. Yeah, that's working pretty good. All right, but let's say I'd put it and it was too high. I'm just gonna show you an example. Pretend I put it like, oh, I'm just gonna try 100. Way too high. Watch it be like. See, I already missed it. Even on the first one, I already kind of missed it. So if you're missing it and you can feel, this is just too hard, that's too high. You're not trying to make it hard. You're trying to make it easy. Not super easy, but just enough where you can actually get it and get 5 good reps. And then you go a little bit higher. And so that's the process. Okay, so just for time's sake, we're going to move on to the next part. But let's say that I practiced that and I got that part down good, or I did enough of that for today, at least 5, say I got 5 good ones, which I did. Then I'm going to find the next tricky part. Okay, so we'll play through the song. We'll just kind of play a little bit close to where we were at. Yeah, see, that's already better. That already, and it feels easier now too. Okay, so. Okay, yeah, just remembering the song. So here we go. So that part doesn't seem too bad. Try it a few times just to make sure. Yeah, so that part's not too bad. So let's try the next part. This part I have a feeling, just because when I was warming up, it was still tricky. It's going to have some tricky parts, but let's see. Yeah, okay. So you can hear it, right? There was the part. So that's what you want to do. You stop yourself right there. You're not like, oh, that's all right. Let me just keep going. Stop right when you get it. So it's right in here. If you're not sure, you can play it again. I'm sure you'll find it. Yeah, so it wasn't there. It was there. That's it. So right after this guy. Yeah, so that's the tricky part for where I'm at. So that's not totally there yet. So I isolate it. So this wasn't tricky. And the part before that wasn't tricky. That's not tricky. That's not tricky. But for some reason, it doesn't really matter why, that was tricky. I got it that time, but those other times it was tricky, so I need to work on it. So that's the tricky part. And it actually, now that I notice, it seems like coming from here is what was tricky, huh? Because just doing this by itself isn't bad, but coming from there seemed to be what made it tricky. Okay, so that's isolating the transition now. So now we're doing the same steps, just on a different part. So that's the transition from here. That's the transition. So I'm only going to isolate just that part. And then let's see what part of the technique is holding me back. So, okay, everything's good there. It's really the transition from here. So oh yeah, I just found it just right there. I don't know if you noticed. When you're playing, when you're isolating your transitions, you got to look real close and really kind of check what's going on. So what I noticed here is that my fingers didn't quite know where to go. You see there was like a little bit of hesitation or a little bit of trying to find their spot. You don't want that. Just like when you're doing chord changes, like if we're doing a chord change, you want your fingers to know right where they're going, right? If your fingers are kind of like, ooh, ooh, and then you do it, that's not what we want. Same thing if you're doing anything else. If you're doing any kind of transition, your fingers are kind of moving around to find their spot. You want to fix that. So that's what we're going to fix. What I noticed is getting my fingers to the right spot. That was kind of the technique part, was getting my fingers to land right there. That way they're set up for that part there. All right? And let's look at, so the next step, so that's, we know which part of the technique it is. It's just getting the fingers to land in the right spot. And we're only going to do the exact part We're not working on anything else. This is the hard part. To there, that's the hard part. Okay, and then we're going to practice it with focus and presence, just like we talked about, and we'll use a metronome. So just all those same steps. But I just want to show you how to play this part, just in case you want to try it out too. So it's on a C sharp minor chord, bar chord. So that's pointer. So you're on the 9th fret. Your pointer finger is the bar on the 9th fret. Ring finger's on the 5th fret. Sorry, on the 5th string on the 11th fret, and pinky fingers on the 4th string on the 11th fret. You strum all the strings. That's C sharp minor chord, bar chord. So going from there to here. Okay, so this is basically just a minor third interval to a major third interval. And so your middle finger is on the 16th fret on the 2nd string. Pointer finger is on the 14th fret on the 1st string. So that's where we're starting there. Here, let's move this down a little bit, actually. Made a really good view here for you. So that's where you're starting. And then you slide. The pointer finger slides up to the 16th fret, and the middle finger slides up to the 17th fret. So the pointer finger is sliding up 2 frets, middle finger is sliding up 1 fret. And so for me, that part's not that hard, but that might be a tricky part for you, maybe. Maybe that part was the tricky part you would want to isolate. Because I remember at one point that was pretty tricky. Okay? So that's what we're playing. We're playing. And this is kind of like a quick strum on the C sharp minor 7, then you mute it with your right hand. Quick strum, mute. Yeah, and I can see here's where it is. My fingers don't know where to go. Okay, so we're going to do this transition, and we're going to do it really slow, just like we talked about. Slow as you need to. So if I can't get it, I'm going to slow it down more until I get it. So let's see. Yeah, so that's a bit too fast. It was a little bit tricky, so let me go slower. Well, that wasn't bad. I got the transition there. Okay, let's see. That seems to be... Try a few just to make sure. Yeah, that's about the right tempo. Because at that tempo, my fingers can land right in the right spot. They're not kind of fumbling around trying to find their spot. So for me, that's the right tempo. If I needed to go slower, like that, to find it, that's fine. Slow as you need to go. But I found my tempo. Find whatever your tempo is. Okay, then find that beats per minute click. So it's like click, 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 click. That's about the tempo I can do it well. Click, click, click. You can kind of verbalize it. Click, get an idea how fast it is. Then grab your metronome and then try it out. So I'm thinking that might be around 60 or 50. I'm going to try 60. Click, 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 click. I think a little slower. Maybe try 55. Click. Let's see. Click, click. I think that's about right. Yeah. Yep. So for me, 55 was the tempo, but you find whatever tempo is right for you. Okay. And then you're just going to practice it with the metronome, and we're going to get 5 good ones, just like we talked about. So let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Yeah, so if you find a good tempo, a lot of times it won't take long at all to get the 5 reps. If it's taking a really long time to get the 5 reps, it's really hard. That means the tempo is too fast. You can slow down the tempo. But that was a good tempo because it wasn't too hard to get the 5 reps. So I'm just going to try going 10 higher. Let's try 65. You kind of listen to see how fast it is. Okay. Yeah, so this one's a little tricky. So that's how you know it's a good tempo, because it's not really hard. I'm like totally falling apart, but it's a little tricky. So that's the one. Okay, I can work on this one to get the 5 reps. There's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 5. Yep. Okay. So again, that was a good tempo because it was a little tricky, but it wasn't too bad to get the 5 reps. Then I would just try 10 higher again and see how this goes. Kind of listen, see how fast it's going to be. Okay. Yep. So this one's a little tricky. I got a few in there, but that last one was a little. I didn't quite get quite right. There we go. Okay, there's 5 in there. And then you would just continue on just like that, just working on the tricky parts. So that's the steps. So just to kind of reiterate those steps. So first thing, isolate the tricky transition, find what the transition is, and isolate it down only to that tricky part. See what the technique is. So like on that example, it was getting my fingers to land in the right spot, but it might be a number of things, like maybe your fingers are too tense in one place and they can't move right. Maybe you're just not using the right fingering. Maybe you're not holding your hand right. Maybe your thumb's too far over. You find out what the technique is. The third step, practice only exactly the part you need to. This is kind of a willpower thing, almost like you got to stop yourself from wanting to just kind of go over the parts you already know. Only practice the part that's hard. Just do the hard part. And then you practice with focus and presence, only practicing what you're working on, letting go of everything else the best you can. And then use it with the metronome, just like we looked at. Starting at the tempo that you can get 5 good ones without too much effort, and then you just go up in small increments on the metronome, 5 to 10 beats per minute from there. All right, so I hope you had a good time. I hope that was really helpful for you guys. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're new. If this video was helpful for you, go ahead and put the like button on. And in the next live stream, we're going to be going over some new ideas, and those might be your ideas. So go ahead and put your comments or put your questions in the comments if you're watching the replay. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys soon.